lift up your off here. Adjust the height as you need to. So Randolph, I'll pass you up after I close the gate behind us. If you do a good quality one, industrial height. Now I noticed, sir, you flipped your ball cap around backwards. It's a great idea. Anybody else wearing a ball cap, it's easier to see when you clear those obstructions. It looks really gangsta on you, so it's from good news. So yeah, a backwards hat allows you to see when you've cleared it a little easier. Now, today we're all cave explorers. Anybody know another word for cave explorer?
Spelunker.
Spelunkers, exactly. So as spelunkers, what are some characteristics of spelunkers? Yes. Some of them are paleontologists. Yep. Very good.
They're not claustrophobic.
They're what?
They're not claustrophobic.
Not claustrophobic. Exactly. That's probably the most important characteristic to be a successful spelunker is you don't mind tight spaces. So today we all have to demonstrate that we don't mind tight spaces. In fact, we don't mind even having no personal space whatsoever. That's a characteristic of us.
That's two problems right there.
Yeah, I can tell I've been somebody uncomfortable. You're pretty good. You pass as a grade spelunker. What about that? I don't know.
They could come up with 2 caves.
So folks, seriously though, we will have to squeeze in tight in some of these spaces so everybody can see in here. So don't be shy about it, get cozy with your neighbor, and we'll all be able to be safe and see and hear everything we're supposed to do. Now, bats, you mentioned, this is an area of a cave that bats often take refuge in. Now, our bats are bug eaters, and so in the summertime, they mostly live in the trees. But in the wintertime, we'll get several hundred of them roosting in this little side passage here. And they'll huddle together, hibernating, when there is no food, to save their energy till spring when more bugs are here. And this ceiling will look like it's covered with fur, like somebody carpeted it with brown fur. They'll be huddled so tight together that from here you can't even see the features of the individual bats. But here, now in the summertime, most of our bats are going to be outside. So we'll look for them, but we probably won't see any in the caves today.
Do they live year-round in here?
No,
They live in
said
the-
they're out.
They live in the area, but they typically...
So they don't swarm out?
No. Like Carlsbad Caverns
Yeah.
is one that many of us have seen pictures or visited there, and they have these maternal colonies, and they live their whole lives in the cave because it's a very consistent, about 70, I think 72 degrees inside the cave. And so they come out every single night to feed and go back every morning.
That's amazing.
So is that why we're not seeing piles of dung?
Exactly, because just like us, bats don't go poop in their sleep. So we don't have big mounds, but if they are awake in the cave, they wake up, they poop, and it grows into giant piles of guano, bat
That's what I meant to
bat
say.
excrement. And we have almost no guano in there, even though they spend all winter up there. So no, we won't get any of those strong smells
Yeah.
or dangerous gases that you can get in a cave that
It
is,
always presses key.
I guess. I didn't catch that, I'm sorry. This is, so this section of any cave that's open to natural light and wind flow is called a grotto. And all grottos will have these kind of cave growths. This is called cave popcorn, also known as cave coral. These very rough calcite formations grow when the airflow pulls that carbon dioxide out of that solution very quickly, forming the very irregular shapes that you see here. Now these things are a wayfinding tool for spelunkers if they ever get lost in a cave or they're exploring a new cave and they find a lot of cave coral or cave popcorn, they know they're near an opening. And they just can do like expanding circles looking for where more and more of it is, and that tells them they're moving towards a natural opening and a possible escape. Now, we also, in grottos, might find bears. Now, this cave, no bears, because we have put the grates on that keep large animals out. We've had those grates on since sometime in the 30s. We've had various forms of gates on it. The bats can get in and out through those wide open slats, but large animals can't get in here. I did see actually a squirrel in here, my very first time seeing a squirrel in here in my morning tour. But we get a lot of animals that come in for a little bit of refuge from the heat, and then they go back out. And we also have, in this cave, 5 species of bugs that have evolved uniquely in our cave. They're unique species and exist nowhere else in the world. So I saw one of them on the last tour. We'll look for all 5. We may or may not see them. They're very rare, obviously. This is a very fragile ecosystem. One of the reasons we only allow guided tours in our cave is to protect those 5 species, make sure we're not getting into areas where we might harm them.
What do those bugs eat?
They eat each other mostly,
Okay.
but they also
Around the
eat
circles.
algae. So you see this green stuff? Algae's growing here, and so is moss, and that's something we introduced with our lights. That's one of the reasons we keep the lights so low, is trying to minimize the growth. We're upsetting the ecosystem a little bit by having the lights, so we occasionally come in here and we'll scrape that green stuff off, but that actually damages the cave. So we're kind of trying to walk the line here between upsetting the ecosystem, potentially hurting the native animals that live here, versus leaving the moss there. So we don't know the right balance yet. We haven't figured it out. Hopefully we won't hurt those 5 bugs in the process.
Just turn off the lights, make everybody wear night vision goggles.
Yeah, we could do that. Our biologists on staff, resource people, would prefer no lights in the cave because that's the natural state of the cave. But you can't run tours, and national parks exist for each of us. They're for our benefit, enjoyment, education, and if we can't access it, we can't do those things. All right, other questions before we go deeper? I want to show you some of those nicer looking calcite formations in the next room. So first hazard here is a step, and then we'll practice our duck rock around the corner, and then we'll pause again in the room that has a lot of the flow stone that you're more accustomed to seeing in other caves or things. So follow me. The calcium redepositing to create things like very thin soda straws and stalactites and flowstone. These are cave draperies over here. Right up, can you see what I'm
Oh yeah,
pointing in? Oh, good.
I'm here.
All the way down to the floor here is flowstone. So please don't touch because we leave behind our oils and lids and so forth and it damages it. In fact, all this flowstone here is blackened because people touched it, usually inadvertently, accidentally, not knowing that they were damaging it. All this got ruined by many years of people touching it. Most of this damage occurred in the first 40 years after this cave was discovered, including all this breakage above me here. You can see all the stalactites up here. Almost all of them have been broken off by souvenir hunters. And that was really before people viewed conservation in the same way we do today. Very few people would consider doing such a thing today. But back in the 1800s, late 1800s, a lot of people thought it was okay to take whatever they wanted from the earth. and so they took souvenirs. Now, to repair that damage, because some of these you can see the ends are rounding here, growing additional length, adding to the broken stalactites and soda straws. But these very thin soda straws in the ceiling, these grow at the rate of a centimeter every 100 years. So each one of those in the ceiling there represents 1,000 years of growth. And the floral stone on the wall, many thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years to create all this floral stone down to our feet. So it's going to take many generations to heal the damage that was done really just in the first 40 years after this cave was discovered. I also want to point out some really rough marble here. This is one of the features of the acid etching of marble, is it just follows the weakest link in the stone, so you get the really irregular shapes. If a river cuts down through a stone canyon, typically you'll see smooth stone because it gets polished. The river pushes stone and gravel against the bedrock and polishes it. And you'll see some polished marble behind me as we cross this river again. And you'll also see it on the ceiling, showing that river, the force of running water, also helped to expand our cave system. But all this is really pretty in spite of all the breakage. And some of it, if you, those of you, can you all see this millstone, my light shining through it? So that, anybody know what that's called? It's another fake food. Bacon! Bacon! Exactly, cave bacon. Early cave explorers would see a strip of calcite, and if it had some dark light pattern, they say it resembled bacon, and they would get hungry. Now I had a BLT for lunch, so I'm satisfied. The rest of you are going to be hungry by the end of this tour, because we're going to see a lot of bacon. There are some tree roots growing down from above as well. These are natural parts of any cave close to the surface. Now this ceiling is about 30 feet below the ground, so that tree root is at least 30 feet long, where it breaks through the ceiling. And behind me, there's the biggest Douglas fir root anywhere in the world. It's more than 70 feet long, and Douglas firs typically only grow a 35-foot tap root. So that one's on the floor of the room right behind me, and we'll see that next. Before we go though, anybody have questions about what we're saying? Let me point out one other thing too. You've already crossed this river twice. You're about to cross it the third time. This river was named by early explorers for stories that they were familiar with, like all the features of the cave. They related to things they know. So they named it the River Styx. Who knows the story of the River Styx? Yes? Yeah, and where did it take you? Exactly. It was the underworld. And the afterlife specifically. Not a negative connotation to it like hell. It's viewed as just the afterlife. And so you didn't want to get stuck in their equivalent of limbo. So when you died, the tradition was that you had 2 coins placed on your eyes. That's where the tradition came from, the belief in the River Styx. This one-way trip across the River Styx. To get there, you had to pay the boatman, the tour guide, if you will, to get to the other side. It was a one-way trip, never to be crossed again, never to rise to the world above. So today I got some good news for you folks. You've crossed the River Styx 3 times already. You will return to the world above. And best news of all is I don't take tips. So you money yourself. All right, why don't we go on? I'll show you the tree root, and then we're going to talk about the guy that discovered the cave after that. So the ceiling light I have to turn off to reduce moss. As you come in here, take a look at this large tree root on the floor. And it goes up into the ceiling here. So, very long tree root. Nothing eating it, but some fungus, because it's too cold for termites or gardener ants. This tree will be here for hundreds of years, even though the tree above died.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right,
I'm at the bridge.
Tighter so you can see as well. So this ceiling you can see is polished, it's smooth. Not like that real rough marble I showed you in the last room there. And that tells us the river used to flow at ceiling level. They used to push sand and gravel across the ceiling, and it took many tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of years for that river to cut its way down through the rock, down below us where it runs today. So again, it's the combination of water carrying acid, slowly etching away the stone, or rushing water, pushing sand and gravel, polishing the stone, etching away, kind of like a river will cut a canyon through a plateau. And you can see those fine cracks. Randolph asked about the quality of the marble, and this room really illustrates these fine cracks, that lines that run this way and this way are sealed with a little bit of calcite. And that those fine little fractures allowed the cave to be developed. Now, in this case, they filled and the water ran elsewhere, so we didn't get the stalactites forming here, just those little lines forming. But again, that's a prerequisite to have a cave in marble, is to have kind of poor quality marble. And here's some more tree roots falling down through some bigger cracks right in front of me. So now let me tell you about the guy who discovered the cave. Some of you saw his name on that marker outside the cave. His name was Elijah Davidson. Elijah lives in the town of Williams, which is a small town, about 2-day horseback ride over the mountains behind us. He was hunting in the area with family and friends from his town in 1874 nearby, and his dog Bruno. And they were hunting deer, but Bruno caught the scent of a bear, started following the scent line, and found the bear, chased the bear. Bear runs into the cave, and Bruno follows him in. So Elijah did not want to lose his best hunting dog, so he immediately follows Bruno into the cave as well, yelling after him to get back here, Bruno. But he could hear Bruno going deeper, trying to catch that bear and barking, but not yet crying. No signs here, he was injured. Elijah had those old